at that, a little bit early tonight.
Up.
On the dot. On the dot.
Early?
A little bit early, yeah, a couple minutes early tonight. What
There you go.
we were trying to do is catch you away again, seatless, without sans seat,
Sans seat.
out of your seat, Yes,
Well, since my video has frozen, I could leave right now. You wouldn't know.
that is true. It's very magical, actually. It's like a Mission Impossible where they
loop it in.
interrupt the feed and they loop it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right on. That's what you could do.
I remember, like, I don't even know what movie it was that they did that first.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's one of those things that they just do
yeah.
it.
It's old.
all
It's
the
old
time.
Stripe. Yeah.
But now it's like they do it, and they always get caught because it's kind of like they're sitting there. Wait a minute, that guy already walked down that hallway 4 times.
Kirk, what the hell are my 4 countdowns?
Listen, where's
We
your 4
did it.
countdowns, and where's your 4 extra minutes?
Amen. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, fine.
Consider the. There he goes. Consider the gun officially jumped.
That's right. Speaking of which, I was going to tell you, Yahoos, that I am almost done with Cowboy Bebop season 1.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's I mean, I don't watch a ton of TV, and I definitely don't get to watch TV every day, but we're making steady progress through it. I think I'm on episode 8, I think.
Is it 10? I guess.
It's in 9 or 10. I think 10, yeah.
So,
And
So the question is, before you continue,
Yeah.
had you watched the series at all? Okay, cool. So then you're coming into this fresh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
I know nothing.
my suspicion is that this is a Wheel of Time scenario where I am enjoying it because I don't know anything about it. And if I liked the anime at all, I would be furious. That's
See,
just
I've
a guess.
heard that people really enjoyed the anime actually do enjoy this from the people
Okay.
that I know. Maybe it's not. I
It's-
don't have a large enough sampling,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's pretty corny.
all right.
Yeah.
It's heavily corny, and it's very serialized, right? Like every episode kind of has a beginning and an end, and it's only loosely tied to the stuff on either end of it. Is it not serialized? Isn't the right word then?
Much-
Procedural?
Much like Adventurers League used to be.
Oh no, are we? Are we
Not yet,
starting
not
this
yet,
conversation?
not
This is
yet, not
really
yet, not
early,
yet.
man. Do you want to go on the record?
We haven't even done the intro yet.
No, it's like if what you want is like, oh, here's a great example. It is like a slightly more adult, slightly lower budget version of Guardians of the Galaxy.
That is a very good. Analogy. Yes, the Dapper Rage.
Right on.
Okay, so
It's a gentlemanly anger.
gentlemen, I have a question about John Cho.
Yeah.
Is he a martial artist? Does he have
I have no idea.
an extensive
no
martial arts
idea.
background?
There's a couple scenes where I kind of got the feeling that maybe he was, is because it looked like he was kind of handling himself in a way that implied a familiarity there. But
Yeah, but then also I've seen some of the fight scenes. It's like y'all are moving real slow.
yeah,
Like
it's
I'm supposed to do this.
That may be bad. That may be bad camera work though, and bad editing, right? Because
It's-
you
I
can.
don't
There's a
know.
lot
listen.
of.
This
there's a lot
show
of
is
give.
not about the fights. This show is not about the fights. There is some interesting stuff sometimes with the fighting,
Yeah.
but most of the time it is 100% like it's a cop show where the cops never win in space.
Well, it's not even that they never win. It's they
They
just
never win.
they win until they screw it up.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? Like
I
there's
mean,
never-
it's just
there's-
like
think Boba Fett, except he never actually collects a bounty.
yeah.
That sounds so
Pretty-
sad.
pretty- This is Tag and Bink as bounty hunters. For those Star Wars people.
That's a deep cut Star Wars reference right there, man.
That is a deep cut. Yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
I've seen like what 2 episodes, 3 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
So you've watched it also. Okay, cool. That's one of those that I'll have to give a try.
Yeah.
It's probably for the best that I haven't seen the show, the original.
Did you watch the anime, the original?
Not at all. I was just never interested in it.
Okay.
It never
I'm not a
spoke to
big
me.
anime fan, so
I like some
There's-
anime. I'm pretty particular about the kind of anime that I watch.
you want to know why I've never watched it? Because it's called Cowboy Bebop.
that is the corniest part of the whole show. Like,
Yeah, I'm
I
like-
feel like something was lost in translation because
Yeah,
it doesn't
well-
even feel like it belongs in the universe that they're presenting, right? Like, it's not like, oh, this universe is really wacky and in that way, and so it makes sense once you're in the world. It's like, no, it still doesn't make sense.
Now, is it the fact that they call all bounty hunters cowboys? Is that what the deal
They do
is?
and their ship is called the Cowboy Bebop.
Okay, because I knew it was called the Bebop.
I wonder if you're
Yeah,
right.
I'm pretty-
I wonder if is there really a literal translation of bebop in Japanese? That's what I want to know. Because bebop doesn't
Well-
sound like an Americanized term, right? Like the cowboy dance or cowboy.
Well, it's
I don't know.
like it's like all of the stuff from Japan. The naming of things is just like what?
Well, and bebop is a jazz term, and there is jazz scattered all
A
throughout
lot
the
of
series.
it, yes.
But it doesn't make sense for the ship, I don't think. And okay, and maybe what they're saying is, oh, it's like you're bebopping around the galaxy in your ship. Maybe that's the pitch.
You know?
It just doesn't quite work. All right?
Mhm.
It doesn't quite work. But maybe I don't know. Like we're getting into like a true fan of the show probably is hating us right now and has
Probably.
a perfectly reasonable explanation for it. This is ignorance talking, I'm sure.
This is people that because I've never even considered myself close to being an anime fan.
No,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm really.
Oh no! See that exactly. Bear Droid says, he's been to Japan. It's way the naming conventions over there.
Okay.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think what it is. I once saw like a list of names that a Japanese video game company created, and it was their idea of what American names were, and it was just like, and so now you know where the whole "now your base are belong to us" kind of thing
Oh yeah.
comes from. It's just like I don't know.
This is exactly the type of conversation I want to be having live and on stream.
How about this then? If we're talking about things that we watched recently that I actually did enjoy, I wouldn't give it like an A, but like maybe a B- for nostalgia. If
okay.
nothing else. I watched 8-Bit Christmas with the family.
Ah, okay.
For those that do not know what it is, I think it's on HBO Max. Yeah, I think that's where we watched it. And the premise is there's a kid in the 80s, in 87, that, or it's actually Neil Patrick Harris telling his daughter how he got his Nintendo. And it's how he's like connecting with her, is telling the story. And what it really is it's totally a Christmas story. Like the, Ralphie and the Red Ryder BB gun and stuff like that. It's
Got
that
it.
same formula.
But moved up like 20 years.
Exactly. The 30
You
years,
can't
right?
shoot your eye out.
Yeah, so like his mom and dad didn't want him to have it because he'd shoot his eye out. In this one, his mom and dad don't want him to have it because video games lead to violence. It's like, and so the whole thing is like this. It's really like a nostalgia piece more than anything else. It totally panders to everything that I loved about whenever I was a kid in the 80s, and the MacGuffin was the Nintendo. And they were completely unapologetic about all the stuff with the Nintendo too. It was pretty cool. I liked it. I don't think it's going to be for everybody out there at all. It's probably
it's got
I'm
like
probably the target audience for that one. But
6.7 on the IMDb, which means, in my opinion, that's a pretty high number for a comparison to A Christmas Story. In my opinion, like, because you either hate movies like that when you watch them, or you really like them.
Yeah.
So I don't think that. I mean, we could check and see what A Christmas Story
Yeah,
is.
check-
It's
check.
probably
It felt-
higher
it
now
felt
because it's
like
got
a-
nostalgia.
It felt like a combination, like a cross between A Christmas Story and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's like the jokes of a Diary of a Wimpy Kid kind of thing, where like puke and things like that. Like we had like some like gross humor, like gross kid humor, and like the loud yelling kid. You had the nerdy
Yeah.
kid. You had like the
Yeah.
sassy kid kind of thing. Like had that vibe to it, but really,
Yeah.
it was just like for me.
So-
honestly,
Check this out.
Mm-hmm.
The Santa Claus 6.5, Elf 7.0,
oh, they
And
Elf needs
then-
more than that. Elf deserves more than that.
and A Christmas Story is 7.9. But I think The Christmas Story is significantly older than those others,
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
and I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it has nostalgia bringing those numbers up a bit.
Right.
So I think Elf will climb slowly into the mids. Anyhow, this nobody cares.
Die Hard is the ultimate Christmas movie.
Die Hard's a fantastic.
Bear
movie.
Droid.
Yes.
There are
We had this conversation. I had this conversation with the. This was a great. This is a real. This is a longer story, but it's worth telling. I had this exact same conversation with the Modifius crew during one of our meetings about
Oh.
what is the best Christmas movie, right? It's fascinating because I was curious to see if they had, being from London, if they had a difference of opinion, right?
Mhm.
The quick answer is no, they do not. The correct answer to this question is Batman Returns.
They all said Batman Returns was their answer, or is that
No,
your
no,
answer?
that's my answer. Yeah.
Oh my god!
Uh,
What?
and but here's the thing that I loved. Here's the thing that I thought was awesome. They said that over in Britain, James Bond is a Christmas movie.
Like all of them, or one
No,
of them?
no,
in
no, no.
particular?
Let me put a caveat. What they mean by that is that it is a movie or a franchise that is tied to Christmas.
I've got you.
Right? And let me
Okay.
explain why. Let me explain why, right? They said that growing up, you're going to find some familiarity with this. Growing up, they only had 3 television stations.
Uh-huh.
And during the holiday season, at least one of those television stations would replace a lot of their regularly scheduled programming with going out and buying the rights to show movies. And almost always what they did was they went out and bought the rights to show the newest James Bond, whatever the newest James Bond was, and they would just play it on repeat all Christmas long. So if you turned on the TV, you were going to watch James Bond.
That's
And
like
so for them, like that's a tradition now.
Wow,
is
that's awesome.
you on Christmas time you watch a James Bond movie.
I could see that because my kids they raise a parallel between the Harry Potter movies
Yep. I was gonna
and
say Harry
either
Potter.
Thanksgiving or Christmas, because on what used to be ABC Family is now Freeform, they would do like the Potter marathon for like 2 weeks straight. That's all that's on
Yeah.
Yeah.
that channel. That's it.
Yeah.
Now it's like AMC will do it for a week. Sci-Fi will do it, and they'll play them all. So
I was
yeah,
gonna
they do it all
say,
the time.
Harry Potter, Bear Dread beat me to it. I think Harry Potter is now something that's heavy on rotation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because there's several Christmas scenes
Mhm.
Yep.
in the Harry Potter franchise, and I think that gives them a pass to some extent.
All right, so hang on a
Um,
second before we go too far ahead on this one.
Yeah.
So Batman Returns, beg your
Yeah.
pardon. Like really?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
you're willing to die on that hill?
Well, all right. So here's the thing, right?
You gonna die hard on that
Go
hill?
die hard on that
if
hill.
you accept Die Hard as a Christmas movie, and we're
Okay.
going with that language of like a Christmas movie is your favorite movie that has anything to do with Christmas, right?
Okay.
Then Batman Returns. If you're like, no, actually a Christmas movie has to be like
About Christmas somehow.
about Christmas,
Okay.
I would give a different answer, right?
Okay.
But if you can say Die Hard, I'm going to say Batman Returns.
I'm not even saying
I-
Die
I-
Hard. Troy,
That's-
give me yours, Troy, before I say mine. What is
What,
your
my favorite?
your favorite Christmas movie, or like a Christmas movie you have to watch in order for it to feel like Christmas? Maybe.
Every day, every Christmas day, I pop that sucker or pop that TV on to, was it Turner Movie Classics or whatever,
Mhm.
and it stays on A Christmas Story all day.
Oh wow, so you're committed, or like tournament to TMC.
Mm.
Holy moly, man!
Yeah,
That's like
I'll-
we'll put it on like in the background as white noise for maybe
Yeah, I mean,
one or
I'm not
two
sitting there
viewings,
like-
and we just can't.
I'm not sitting there watching it the whole time, but it's like I turn it on
Hang on a
and
second.
it's playing and we're doing stuff. And
Point of order. Girk is correct. That is the correct answer, by the way. Scrooge.
Scrooge is a great one.
Oh my God,
I'm
it's
gonna
like-
give you that.
I got two movies that I have to watch on December 1st, or at least the first weekend of December. I have to watch Scrooged and Christmas Vacation. Gotta watch it every single year. Or it just I did one year where I didn't watch those movies, and it felt weird. The Christmas felt weird because it didn't put me in the mood of Christmas. Those two movies, man. Scrooged in particular is a friggin'
I
comedic
haven't
masterpiece.
seen Scrooge in a long time.
Oh my God, it's so funny.
We
That's a
had
great-
Christmas Vacation on at work. The other
Yeah.
night, so
I also will give a shout out to. I really like the animated Grinch.
Iron Man.
Right on.
3.
Right on. Iron Man 3.
Oh my god.
Troll in chat.
That
Um,
listen,
yes.
listen.
Yeah.
Wait.
The animated.
In 10 years, that will be someone's
Oh, yeah,
real
totally
answer.
will.
That will be something.
It'll be the die hard argument for some.
So just hang on for 10 years, Bear Droid.
Yeah, your time will come.
Yeah.
Your time
Yeah.
will come.
But no, I like the and there's also a Christmas Carol, an animated Christmas Carol from way back when that's really good.
Yep.
On animated one?
And I say
Okay.
way back,
Lethal Weapon.
yeah.
Okay. That's what we should do is like come up with alternate Christmas movies like Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, things like that. Because I think Die Hard edges out Batman Returns simply because Die Hard takes place at a Christmas party.
Mm.
Christmas happens in Batman
There's
Returns.
Christmas phrasing in it. Whenever Alan Rickman, the elevator opens up, and
I have a machine
the
gun.
dead terrorist there.
Ho,
Now I have a machine gun.
Ho.
Ho ho ho.
ho, ho, ho.
It's so awesome.
Here,
Where are my
this
detonators?
this is the one that you guys need to watch. It is
Krampus.
the
That's a new one of mine that I'll watch every year now. It's just so stupid and
Really?
good. Yeah, it's the
Krampus.
Krampus
I've
movie,
not,
yeah.
I've not seen that one either.
it's the 1971 version.
I think I know exactly which
the
one you're
animated
talking
series.
about.
25 minutes, made for TV. Really good.
I will say, I do love to watch
I don't think I've
A
ever
Christmas
seen this.
Carol during around Christmas time because I have a special tie to that story.
Um,
Yeah. I got to be the ghost of Christmas.
Say
The
present.
ghost of Christmas.
Say
No,
present.
future.
Oh
the-
man,
The dark one.
no way, man.
Yeah.
But now
I
just have-
you totally would need to be like, well, you'd have to be like the old
I'd have to
version
be
of
Santa
Christmas
Claus.
of present, but
Because I got to wear I actually made a dark grayish black cloak that
That's
had a
cool.
really deep hood, and I had no lines. Obviously, I just would do this.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's exactly how it is in this animated. Like, there's no credit for him because all they do is point, right? Like, yeah, that's
Girk,
great.
I knew I loved you for a reason. Emmett Otter's Jug, Band, Christmas.
Christmas.
Hell, yes,
He got so excited.
yes,
Girk's on a roll tonight, man. Dadgum,
man. You were bringing the
busting
deep
out the
poles,
classics. Oh no, not the Star Wars Holiday
Oh.
Special. I watched it once out of curiosity, and man, it is so
It's
painful.
so bad,
to
isn't
watch.
It is
It's
bad.
so bad,
It is
man.
bad.
It's
not even like-
saved
It's got
by
Boba
actually-
Fett.
It's not even. Well,
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. It's not even saved by the fact that it has all of the actual actors in it. It's like It's Harrison Ford is in this thing, and you could tell that he was just so put out by the fact that he had to be a part of it. Emmett Otter's That is
Emmett
awesome.
Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Oh
yeah,
my god,
love that.
I completely
Love
forgot
it.
about that, man. I have to get that for my kids, for my 5-year-old in
yeah.
particular. She would go crazy. Well, if we're talking about Henson though, the Henson Christmas Carol is phenomenal.
It is good.
It's a
yeah.
really good one.
Yep.
Really, really good.
Well, here we've now talked for 15-20 minutes almost about Christmas movies.
We did. I mean, it's the
And,
season. Like this is thematic.
This is the season.
Yeah.
This is the season.
Let's move this discussion over to the movie talk.
Yeah, let's
on
move
the-
it over
on the-
there.
on the Discord, and let's put together a couple
Yep.
lists of movies.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Good call. Good call,
Yep.
gentlemen.
Yep,
Well done.
good call. All right. Troy, are we recording? I'm assuming we are.
We are, because I didn't know where we were going to go with this, so I just went ahead and hit
Awesome.
record.
Awesome. All right. So, chat, here we go. We're going to go ahead and get this thing started. We are going to try to squeeze in 2 topics today as 2 separate episodes. And you're going to have to, this is an opportunity for you to rag on at least one of us by the time this is over.
Yeah.
Because we are shooting for keeping these episodes at 40 minutes. All right. So, chat, you can do us the honor or the criticism of telling us which one of us is the reason that we go over.
Boy.
Apparently, Bear Droid has absolutely no faith in us.
Yeah. Listen, good luck. Listen,
Sure.
here's the
Sure.
thing. There was a time, Bear Droid, a year and a half ago,
It's true.
when we could do it every time.
Mhm.
So,
It-
We
So
were
we
so
could-
proud of ourselves.
and listen, if you go back to the A Bite of D&D podcast, we could do a 15-minute episode. So,
That's obviously pre
Well, that-
Troy and John, though.
I was gonna say that's because
That's
you don't
pretty
have Troy and John on.
That's true.
that's right. I'm just saying
Zach
there
was-
is a world in which it is possible to do an episode within a time constraint.
Yeah,
The
Jack-
dapper rage
Zach-
cannot be contained.
Zach is usually
Yeah,
done
yeah.
in 15 minutes, and then it's just Troy and John word vomiting
Blah,
for the
blah,
45 minutes.
That's true, Gert. We didn't have a live audience. All right, so here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to the Bite Size Gaming Podcast, the podcast that's serving up a buffet of RPG topics to get you through your week. My name is Zach, and the hosts joining me this evening are the dapper DM Troy Sandlin
Hello, all.
and the dwarven DM John Christian.
Ha ha! Hello.
Now, before we get
Whoa.
any further into this, right out the gate, John,
Yes.
how do you feel about the fact that we are within spitting distance of you losing your title?
Oh,
Of me losing my title.
Yeah.
What?
Do you assume? Okay, so you're assuming that you are going to not get DM of the Year 2021.
Oh. That thing. Oh, boy. Let me tell you something. Good for whoever gets it. They can. How do I feel about it? But a level of relief more than anything else, I think.
Troy, you guys are gonna enjoy this. I rubbed my belly when this happened today. I was in a call with like that feeling that you do when you're so full and so comfy, right? So it felt so good. I was in a call with Andrew Bashinsky and Joe Rasso today, and there was a couple other people, and I was introducing Andrew to them. Like, oh, Andrew, he writes for us. Yeah, move on. And Joe's like, wait a minute. You forgot Andrew's biggest accolade. He's also like DM of the century or something of that nature, aren't you, Andrew? And Andrew's over there like,
Mm-hmm.
hiding his face. I'm like,
Welcome to my hell.
this feels delicious. Like, I was so pleased that Joe deserved a raise at that moment.
Joe's Andrew's Mike Amer.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was so
Oh,
good.
Oh man,
It was so tasty.
man!
I
Origins
was
was
so happy.
just. Origins was. I think I stayed red
beautiful.
the entire time because Mike Amer would come up to every table. He even he used my son against me. Make sure when you sit at your dad's table that you say something about him being the DM of the year. And of course, my kid doesn't know how to be quiet at all or subtle, neither one of those things. And so it was. It was miserable. It was miserable.
Oh,
Hmm.
I
I'll be very interested to see who it is because this is a really interesting This would be
Yeah.
an interesting crowd to have it selected from, and I'll be interested to see if we do another twofer like we had last year.
Yeah.
Because to be fair, I want to make sure that I go on record that Laura Thompson was my co.
Was the co-DM? Yeah. Absolutely.
So I always like to make sure that we let me make sure that I pull Laura to the table in that commiseration as well, shall we?
It's no. What you're doing is you're using her as a body shield
That's what it is.
to
Meat
deflect
shield.
some of these. You're like,
Thank
you're
you.
like, no. Well, here. So let's continue this discussion of AL and things of that nature. We have a singular point of news, maybe a couple points. Maybe we should save one of them for the next. For
I
the
kind of
next
feel like they
episode.
flow right in. They kind
Okay.
of flow into each other.
Fair enough. So Troy, which one should we start with?
Well, I want to start with Strixhaven dropped
Yeah, it
today.
did.
Yes.
And so that's pretty cool. And along with Strixhaven, Magic the Gathering is getting its first Adventurers League alternative campaign with Strixhaven, and it happens to be the adventure that's in the book.
Yep.
Mhm.
And what the adventure it is, quite an adventure. Because I think
it's
Zach
kinda cool.
Zach made a really good point that this is almost like looking at the book. It's really more of an adventure book with bolt-ons to make it the adventure more Strixhaven-y, right? Like
Yes.
it's character options and stuff like that, but it's really an adventure book, is what it feels like to me. Like a little bit of a setting book, a little bit of a stuff about feats, spells, magic items, backgrounds, all that good stuff for creating it.
Yeah. I like the idea of the adventure. The fact that it's very much to me in the vein of Harry Potter, obviously. And you're going through the 4 years of wizarding school at Strixhaven. And apparently the way Adventurers League is tackling this is they're taking that adventure and they're breaking it out per year. And I believe they're sectioning it out into threes, like 3 adventures per school year, or something to that effect. Kind of something like that. I have my opinions on that, but
On
I
them
think
introducing Strixhaven or Magic the Gathering to
I-
AL, or the method by
Well,
which they are introducing.
Actually, I have for both. I am glad that they finally are giving some AL love to these alt campaign settings, because we've had Eberron, which has always been what was created for D&D has always been D&D. Ravenloft, the Mist Hunter. I think if they're going to put that effort into a book, give me some adventures, some official insight as to what this is.
Yeah.
And let me play through. Same thing with Theros. Theros was an awesome book.
These are going to be the books that get forgotten, and they already are to some extent, right? Like if you put out a setting book and don't put out adventures to support it, you are signing yourself up to be lost, right?
Well, let me ask you this: with the introduction of Strixhaven and Magic the Gathering, one thing that kind of got lost in the shuffle too was Critical Role's Tal'Darai book. There was like a living Tal'Darai thing that I remember them having. They did that for a bit. I don't know how much traction it got. It really didn't seem like it had a whole lot.
Well, that was like one guy in
fan
New
made,
Jersey
right?
writing that.
Right.
That's what I heard. It didn't get much traction.
But with that not getting much traction or attention, really, do you see Call of the Netherdeep being something that they incorporate into AL?
I do. Because of this, but I didn't until they announced that Strixhaven was going to get an alternate.
Right. Well, and for those of you out there that are AL players, you'll notice that there is the elephant in the room is that there is a lack of support in season 11 for auxiliary or parallel content for Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Everything is coming out of the book these days. So I'm not really surprised that they're doing a lot of. I'm not surprised at all that that's the thing that they're going to do for more books that are coming out, is they'll get converted for AL play. Now, here's the real question behind all of that: is if everything's going to get AL converted to AL eventually, how much is that going to affect the writing process and the adventure design process for these hardcover books that are coming out now?
That's a great segue into our other topic, right?
Sure is,
Yep.
isn't it? You like
Sure
that?
is.
You are
I like
welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next topic that will kind of fuse to this is we got a letter from the editor, so to speak. Chris Tulloch, the new head of Adventures League, posted a blog entry on Tales from the Yawning or from Yawning Portal, which is the AL site. You can go and read it there. He talks about the two pillars of Adventures League play, and it's not the pillars that you're used to
Yeah.
talking about. It's not about pillars of D&D in general. It's pillars of Adventures League as a device, right?
Right. But
And
it's two pillars supported by like 3 buttresses each, kind of thing.
Right.
yeah, it's a little bizarre. But okay, so I think we should break this up into two statements because I think after Troy and we all had this discussion. I think we realized that if we only say one of these, we're missing a broad spectrum of the thought, right? So the first statement that I think we should make is, I think that the Adventures League organized play that Tulloch envisions with the pillar of community and the pillar of content, and then community being shared experience as a priority, recognition as a priority, and peer enrichment as a priority, and the content pillar being bite-sized play. Hey, look at that. I think he stole that from us.
Oh, yeah.
Feedback loops and ease of DM use. Those, 2 sections of 3 pillars each, or however you want to imagine it, I think are basically we're happy with. If just as a theory, principle of what a great organized play campaign should have, right?
Agree.
So let me just walk over those a little bit slower. Shared experiences, right, with the community. The idea that like you're playing similar things to the other person at the other table, and you can say, I played Adventure 10-1. They say they played Adventure 10-1, and we know that there's
common ground.
There's common ground, right?
Yeah, it doesn't
I
have to
agree
be
with
exact,
that one.
but there's synchronicity
Right.
between the two,
Right.
to where you can share tales with one another about how your players thwarted X or found Y, right?
Yep. And then recognition. Recognition is a weird one. Recognition for him is this idea that like, everybody's working towards a common goal, but sometimes there are people who stand out. Like think about an epic, and the person who solves the puzzle, I think, is his example during an epic, and you get recognized for that. That's cool and interesting. I don't know that it's that huge of a priority for me that I would put it as one of these tenets or pillars, but I don't mind it.
If it actually happened.
Well, and that's the second part of this, right?
Yeah.
So we're just talking about in theory.
Well, okay, yeah, in theory, yes. Even in practice from before, it would happen every once in a while.
Yeah.
And I
And then
think it needs to be more.
And then peer enrichment is the last one of community. I think this one is a good in theory as well. The idea of one of the secret sauces or secret ingredients of organized play is that playing with strangers helps you learn the game better or gives you a more well-rounded perspective of the game. Completely agree by and large. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't exceptions to that, but I think by and large we can be happy with that statement.
Sure.
Content is a whole lot more easily understood. We've got bite-sized play, which means they want the quote here is what this practically means is that most adventures need to start and finish within a session, making them feel more like procedural television than serialized programming. I agree with that statement as a target to live by. Feedback loop, the idea that as we play the game and as characters and DMs influence the story and present outcomes, those outcomes of various degrees will filter back into the creative process and inform the campaign going forward. So it's very much living. The story adapts to not just to the writing that's done, but how that writing is interpreted at the table. that a fair statement?
That is a fair
Totally.
statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then the last one is ease of DM use, which he's saying, hey, it's super important for us that the adventures that are part of AL are really simple to run, minimal prep, sound utility. That's the goal, right?
Right.
So we're like, if this was the mission statement of AL, I think we're like, sure, we can live with this, right? And to some extent, I think he is presenting it as the mission statement of AL. The breakdown, and this is part 2, is this isn't. These are not the tenets that AL has chosen to live by.
Right.
It's, or let's say it like this: great on paper, not the way that they've executed it, that we've seen it thus far.
Yes, there you
Right.
go. Yeah.
And to me, the biggest downside, or the thing that like just like smacks you in the face, is this gets dropped. A few days ago,
Mm-hmm.
and what they're doing with Adventurers League right now is nothing like what is being talked about.
And to be fair to Chris, and to the admins and everybody else involved, maybe that's like what they really want, and maybe that's kind of a manifesto of maybe it hasn't been like this, and maybe it's not like this right now, but this is what we're trying to get towards. But I think part of why it's hard for people to kind of to digest that is that the things that they asked, that they've said that they wanted, are things that they've had in the past that have been very much in that line, and now they are not. And everything that we keep hearing about, like the new stuff, the next thing, it doesn't. Whatever they're trying to inform us of is not what we're seeing, and I think that creates some frustration. If you just come out and say, "Hey, look, the people have spoken, and this is the way that they want it." People want to play the hardcovers, and so we're giving them the hardcovers as an option to play because their home groups can't do it. So if they go out and public play or friendly neighborhood game stores and stuff like that, they can do it there. But I'm not, even though that's what. But I'm not. Neither am I hearing nor seeing those two things out of WotC. It's not being executed like that, is what it seems like. So I think it creates confusion, which creates frustration in the players. And I'm not even saying this as a DM. I'm frustrated as a DM a bit by it, but the other players that we play with on a regular basis, they've voiced their consternation about some of it too, about that inconsistency in vision versus execution of AL.
Big time.
Yeah. We could dive in more into that, but I think I would like to see a few more days to see if there's a response to this, or if they talk about this some more. I think we should watch it develop. I would love to hear Tulak say, "This is the vision, but it's not." Like he noodles around with that idea of like, "This is the vision, but it's not the reality." I'd like to see if he would like to present like a roadmap to here's how the vision becomes the reality.
I would love to see a comment section on that article.
That's the YouTube video that it has comments locked on it, I think.
Locked, because
and ratings.
Somebody go mine the D&D Discord and shoot us a message for how the response was to this when it dropped, because that's where you would find
that
the
would be
comment
very,
section
very
currently.
interesting. That would be very interesting, because I probably would have dropped a comment or two.
So let's that's kind of the two news pieces that we have for you today. We're going to refill our drinks. When we come back, we're going to do a topic. And we're back. Look at that. Smooth as molasses.
So fast.
I think, fellas, that for our topic this evening, we should talk about session soundtracks.
Oh, boy.
Ooh.
Now, the reason that I think we should talk about this is that I think we have three, at least somewhat different approaches to this. And what we mean by soundtracks, I'm going to preemptively like kind of frame this with any sort of audio that you bring to the table. All right, that's the framework of this discussion, and I think that I think the best, because there's not going to be a right answer here, right? That's not what we're
Yeah.
trying to suss out. What we're trying to suss out is three different opinions, three different ideas about how you approach sound at the table. Um, so less of a debate, more of like here you're gonna hear three different uh, viewpoints
Yeah.
or things. And I think I have a feeling on how everybody's gonna sit. So let's start with Troy. Troy, talk to us about what's your approach to sound at the table.
Very minimal. I it to me it's for me it's more of a thing that gets in the way than is worth it. I will find some music maybe. Okay, for an example, the House of Lament, when we ran the
Hmm.
House of Lament
Mhm.
on virtual weekends. I did find some creepy music and I put it on low and just left it. I didn't have certain tracks for certain rooms or things like that. I did actually go and make some different sound effects. Some of them I actually forgot to use. Um, and again, because it's that whole, uh, um, some of the things I forgot to use because it's like I have to go find it and I'm doing this. And if it's not a quick button push, like I've seen some have those audio docs or whatever they call them,
Yeah.
um, if I'm like looking at something, the players can see me searching and doing
Hmm.
whatever, and then all of a sudden they hear a noise or a weird sound coming through their headphones. It kind of like um, might not be as cool. Yeah, Girk. The reason why I was laughing, Girk in chat says he hated me for that because I had a little doll laugh for a particular scene. Um, and yeah, I think I made him jump a little bit because it was just perfect. I mean, I'm not against sound effects or music, but for me running the game, they just get in my way because if I forget them, then I'm like, oh dang it, then I feel like I didn't give them something cool, um, or if I have it too loud or too soft. And a lot of times, if you have music on, for me, I do have some difficulty in hearing at times.
Mhm.
So if somebody's playing that music for me, I'm going to go and probably shut it off.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of other players do that too. So I'm like,
Mhm.
well, why am I spending time trying to find all these, these 12 tracks for all these rooms when I could just here's one thing, I'm just going to go with it and we're done. Now, there was one time in person that I used music and it was for an adventure written by James Introcaso called Hunter.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I used a particular movie soundtrack
Hmm.
through the whole adventure session,
Hmm.
and nobody got it
Oh, that's sad.
until almost the very end. They were like, "Wait a minute, you're playing that soundtrack, and we're in." Oh man, it was a lot of fun. That part was a lot of fun just because it was kind of a goof.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Now,
again, I hit play and just let it go.
Mhm.
so real quick, let me ask a follow-up question for you. You talked about like setting and forgetting, or like like setting it up just to think. Are you doing that in Roll20? Is
Yeah,
that your okay? So you're finding a track in Roll20 or uploading a track to Roll20,
yeah,
hit and play, hit and loop, and then just turning it down real low.
and just
Mhm.
turn it down real low. And
Perfect.
every
Okay.
and like with that, if I do have some particularly cool music and it's easy for me to like bounce back and forth between, I'll add things, or during a certain part, I might turn it up,
Hmm.
turn it back down, and that's about as into the sound as I get. If I do
Yeah.
anything at all,
Mhm.
if I do anything at all,
Fair enough. I'll go next on this one. I think I'm not sure if John or I are going to be the heavier of the two here.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna take a stab in the dark and say John will probably beat me. Um, so I've actually got one of my Roll20 games pulled up here, so I can kind of give an accurate description of what I do. So I create folders within the jukebox, and those folders are for different types of scenes. So, like in my Dune game, I have a folder called Ambiance, a folder called Combat, a folder called Desert, and a folder called City. And then within those, I'll probably just search the actual Roll20 archives. Sometimes I'll go find tracks elsewhere, but search the Roll20 archives, and when I find something that I like, I drag it into one of those folders, and I will rename it, what I get from this, right? So as an example, in the ambiance, I might say steady, or dark rhythm, or horrific, or echo, or whatever, right? So like I'm trying to communicate what this feels like, or the feel that this is going to give us, so that when they're in an abandoned research station and they're down in the lower halls, I could be like, oh, I want steady, and I want echo and machine as my two things, and I'll just hit play on a couple things and move on. And then when we go to a new scene, I just always switch the music up. And so there may be 2 hours where we're on the same loop of the same thing and we don't worry about it. But then if we're swapping through scenes pretty regularly, or if we are going from combat to non-combat to this other thing, I can be cycling through different audio tracks pretty heavily.
Mm-hmm.
If we're in person, I have taken to trying to get my Roll20 up and on a speaker in person, so I can just do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't do that, I will try to do Spotify and just pull up a quick like ambient playlist and just play ambient. The problem with that though is that inadvertently it always gets the music gets exciting at the wrong time, or the music isn't exciting when it should be. And so I really hesitate to just set and forget unless I have two options, one for like quiet in the background and one for like, all right, something's happening. We want to build that momentum with some high pace, with some drums. Um, and I used to do porting over Spotify to Discord, and I would play the sound in there with the Groovy bot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Groovy got shut down, and really I found again that like it's really cool, but it's another thing that I had to go click on and mess with, and so I was ignoring it when I shouldn't, and so I went back to just Roll20. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, Troy mentioned sound. At the beginning of every campaign, typically at the beginning of every session, I remind people, hey, there's music going on in the background. You can head over to the settings cog and adjust it to your liking.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of my standard thing. If you start the session with that, nobody gets frustrated. If you wait till 10 minutes in and you have that guy like raise his hand and be like, how do I turn the music off?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You've lost, right? Like that guy hates you now for those 10 minutes. So
Well, that's what I was going to ask about,
um,
is whether or not you use any,
yeah,
like, if you use sound effects at all. Any of your games? Music,
yes.
yes. Sound effects.
Sound effects are a great statement. I always with the sci-fi thing have an alarm sound effect
Like a klaxon.
because I found klaxons and
Yeah.
things like that. Um, with my Alien game, I have things like metal bins falling over. Like
Oh
I'll go to
yeah.
freesound.com and download like
Yeah.
boom boom, and then just turn it down real soft. Like I always pre-test everything in my own headset before players are in there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll have some music going. And I'll just hit the play button and I'll hear like boom boom. Like yep, that's exactly what I want. Or I'll go find like T-Rex roar, and some
Mm-hmm.
jackwagon on Free Sound has contrived like a
Yep.
great T-Rex roar, and I'll be like, that's mine, dropping it in here. So yeah, but very sparingly, and typically for those like high impact moments, like you were talking about the doll giggling,
Yeah.
Troy. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the things that you're like, I can't do this, but if I could insert something in there, it would be perfect, right? So
I I remember now that I did something like that for um, the fourth adventure in Eberron, in the Eberron Adventurers League. I was running it for my home group, and at the end, I had the fourth adventure, third adventure, either one that set up for the epic. They're all in this house, and I had found this machinery sound like as if something was struggling to move,
Mm-hmm.
and I had it all set up. I didn't use sound really for anything else in the whole adventure, and I had it cranked all the way up. So when I was like, they're sitting there talking, I'm like, perfect, and I just hit play. It is, and they're like, what the hell's going on? It's like, I don't know. You hear something from outside, and then they ran out and it's like, what do you see? It's like, I don't know, because that's where we're going to end it.
Right.
And
Awesome.
yeah, so then the next time we played, we actually played in person.
And you pulled out your mech.
yeah,
Yeah,
put up my big mo.
that's love. I love that.
That's awesome.
John, what do you do?
Yeah, man, I love soundtracks. I love music. Whenever I was a kid, I fell in love with like John Williams, Hans Zimmer, and Graham Revel and things like that. So for me, I fell asleep to music all the time. I had one of those like the old timey, we call it now, I guess, disc changer CD players where it was like 7 discs. I'd slap that thing in, and I would play the Crow soundtrack, Dragonheart, Dragon's Lair. If I had Lord of the Rings back then, I'm sure I would put that in there too. So for me, music's really important. But I've learned a lot in the last year and a half to 2 years in particular about like how much is too much and how much is just a pain to deal with. So I've moved around a bit in the last year in particular. Like at D&D Celebration 2020, holy crap! I invested way too much time and effort into every single kind of sound that just needed to be in there is going to be in there. We're talking hyenas laughing and the wind and dripping and cave sounds and the sound of an avalanche and a walrus roaring and like just every little thing that I could think of that would be in there. It stressed me out because first of all, Roll20 is like okay when it comes to playing sound, but it's like really mediocre at managing the sound. So it's not like I had a soundboard that I could just go click, 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 like a Sirenscape or something like that. You're having to like constantly navigate through crap and remember to use it. And then to kind of Troy's point, we're like, damn it, I didn't use that sound. That sucks. I'll have to use it next time around in the next game. So, I mean, I went whole hog on that. And since then, I've pared it down to what I think are more of the essentials for me at least. So the first thing that I have in all of my games is I have essentially a session soundtrack, or not soundtrack, but a theme song, right? Like something that is very deliberate, like whether it's the Gladiators March for the Carnival in Wild Beyond the Witchlight, or if it is like a more of a Hunt for Red October Russian epic, like a very, it sounds like a good winter cold song, that kind of thing. So whenever the players are coming in, set some mood and some ambiance there. I'll do a on play on load kind of thing, right? For each of the pages. So when they go to a map, a song or a soundtrack or sound set will already be there. So it's not something that I have to finagle with. I've tinkered with editing, like cobbling together my own sounds for some of my games to honestly more of a limit of Roll20 about how effective it really is than anything else. I don't know, less now than I had used in the past, but still I definitely use it because again, music is it's evocative for me. And so it helps me even if it's not helping the players at all, it's helping me. And I do the same thing that Zach does, where I kind of prompt them and say, "Hey, just there's the volume bar. If you don't like it, whatever." But it's for me, right? That's on Roll20. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, the thing that I find is if you preempt with that, and there'll be a few people that like turn the volume down or basically off or whatever, but then almost always, and almost every session I hear somebody say like, "Ooh, that was good,"
right?
Yeah, like that's a good sound. And then somebody's like, "Oh, wait a minute, all right, like I'll turn this up like like, and there's certain games, certain settings, certain systems that I think sound is a must.
Mhm.
Like anything that's horror based,
Yes.
boy,
Yes.
you'd better pull those soundtracks out
Mhm.
because it's impossible, in my opinion. You are climbing up a hill, like having a soundtrack is like being handed a rope and a ladder for your
Mhm.
climb
Hmm.
up the horror hill. If
Well, it's so
it makes it
useful.
so much easier.
It's so
Yeah.
useful in a lot of stuff. Like, so that's my on the platform, right? On virtual games, that's kind of the way that I manage it. But in person, I really love using sound for, like, if I'm planning on the bad guy monologuing at some point, then I want to have something in the background that's going to kind of like rise up in behind me. So whenever Strahd had that final confrontation, and he had something that he was going to say, and so as long
Yeah.
as no one interrupted him and tried to stake him in the middle of his speech, he was going to say something, and it was in behind
Yeah.
him, and it was part of the scene itself, right? It was just as important as the stones and the sounds and the smells and the sights in the dungeon that kind of were in the people's mind's eye. And it
Yeah.
kind of that swell, like the adventure swell, I think is important. Using it in combat, oh man, got to have at least some kind of
Yeah.
combat clanking, rattling, banging, something in the background, just so there's like no dead, like that. Just
Yeah.
absolute silence is deafening in.
I cannot remember the last time I ran a combat with a dead sound.
Yeah. Yep.
See, and
It's been probably 2 years.
and I don't throw anything on there that's like clattering and clanking, because again,
You distraction.
it's a distraction for
Mhm.
me, and and I personally would find it annoying if I was
Mm.
playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's not going to suck me into that combat,
Hmm.
because back in the day when I first started playing D&D, we didn't have any of that stuff anyway. So
Mhm.
it's not something that I needed.
Hmm.
So I definitely don't need it now.
And I don't think
And
I don't think you need it. I'm not saying that any of the three of us need it necessarily. I think it provides, again, it's just like white noise in the background to keep it from, like, we're all just hearing each other whistle through our noses when we breathe, kind of thing, more than anything else, you know.
What? How do you breathe?
Like that right
I'm
there. I was trying to say
Yeah.
it without pointing Troy out explicitly, but yeah, it's fine.
Well, here let's round out with this because we've all given kind of our points of view or our ways of approaching it. Let's give some resources real quick here at the
Oh
end.
yeah.
So we've talked about it twice now. Freesound.org is a great spot to go and just find the perfect like little atmospheric clank or scream or roar.
or dull giggle.
Yeah, or dog giggle, whatever you need there, is awesome. That would be my first go-to as far as that sort of thing. There's actually secretly a ton of stuff in the jukebox for you to mine. You just in Roll20, you just got to go hunt, and you really need to set like, in my opinion, set aside like 20 minutes and get used to like their tags for things and how to navigate it. But
Yeah, it's
there's
almost like searching through Google, where you're kind of, they're like meta tags. Like
you have to find the
cave,
right
town,
yeah.
horse.
Yeah,
something
you
like
have,
that.
and they've got that other one that doesn't have anything to do with like cave town. It's got like percussion as like a tag, and so you got to kind of know which ones, which tags are right for what you're doing. But spend some time in there, and I think that's good. John, I think you're going to be better at this. I know Chat's been asking like, what's the groovy alternative now, and what are some other resources that you might point people to?
Man, that's the tough part, because there's just not a whole, like, Discord really cracked down on pumping any sound through Discord. I don't have an answer for that one yet. The only thing I can tell you is to build a library in Roll20. It's a bummer too, because one of the things that I would do is I would just like to have it there. There are YouTube videos out there, quote unquote videos, that are just ambient sound. Like, one of my favorite ones is like Deep Forge, where it's like if you're thinking about what is it in World of Warcraft, where the dwarves all live, right? So there's like, it's just like the forge fires and like lava that's moving through, and this like distant clanking and like people moving around and stuff like that. All that stuff is phenomenal. Just go, and it's like, there are some that are like 4 hour, 5 hour long videos. You just
Yeah, but you can't get that big of a file on Roll20. Like
No,
that's the
that
thing
is
to
true.
keep in mind, right?
yeah.
Is like don't go find even probably a 5 minute long file is probably outside the scope of what Roll20 is going to let you upload,
Yeah, it's
depending on the file size. But
your file size is probably going to be no bigger than like 10 to 15 megs, which you can have a pretty good sized. You can get like a 10-minute file doing that, but even
No.
still,
Yeah.
you're gonna run out of space really quickly, even if you have a pro account with file sizes
Yeah.
like that.
Now, what you could do is find some of those videos and go through the process of pulling the audio off and running it through Audacity
Mm-hmm.
and compressing it
yeah,
and chopping it up.
that sounds like a lot of work.
That is a lot of work.
Which
It's
is
totally
which
not
is
worth it.
exactly what I had to do for the giggle and all the other stuff that I did.
It was
So-
dangerously specific, wasn't it? Whenever he was explaining it, it's like he did this. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's work, but it's not. Once you do it a couple times, it
You know what
gets
you're
a lot easier.
Greg's
I
had
don't wanna-
don't talk
Greg's
to
triggered.
dog,
It's
dog
official.
giggles. Thank
I
you.
don't want to stop
Yeah.
talking about dog giggles. But yeah, I mean, once you do it a couple times, it gets a little bit easier as far as the Audacity thing goes, and then you can just, as long as you've gotten it small enough, you just drop it in, hit loop.
Yeah.
and
So now your alternative, right? I did look up. There is one alternative, but it's one of those like it's not worth the pains of going through it. Is to have a separate account in Discord that is your music account, and then pipe through instead of piping your mic through, you pipe your desktop audio through
Yep.
it, and then it's like the desktop is the person that's speaking outward to it. The good thing about that is it's a lot easier to manage and navigate and mess with
Yeah.
than it is even with like Rhythmbot and Groovebot and stuff like that. You'd still have to like exclamation point play, copy paste, link, and all that other crap that you have to get in order to get it to work. You don't have to do that as much. But it is another administrative hassle that you've got to deal with of having a separate account and make sure that all the permissions are set up for it and blah 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 blah. Yeah. So there are ways around it, but I don't see they're just not worth it. I mean, honestly, at this point, there's so much there's like this Zach said in the library that they provide you in Roll20. There's so much stuff in there already. You should be able to make that work. And if you want something really specific, it should probably be instead of a sound effect like those sound effects are going to be really small and just maybe really deliberate and very like curate that really really well and only use it at the right time, which is actually probably a good thing because then it keeps you from like having to worry about the anxiety of putting it together. And it's just not a lot of the times you're not going to get as much bang out of it for the buck that you think you're going to get out of it unless it's like if you're using it all the time. You know, if people are always expecting sounds to be piped in for this, that, and the other, then they're not going to listen for it as much. Usually, it becomes white noise. Like the thing that you want it to be for music is the thing it becomes for like all the little really specific things you want your players to hear.
Perfect. All right, with that, that's going to conclude our chat about session soundtracks. I thought that was good. It's a good little topic. And I'm interested to come back to this one maybe after a year or two and see if we've changed our tune yet again.
Oh, I see what you did there. Haha.
Yes.
Want to thank chat for hanging out with us. Girk, Craig, Bear Droid,
I think
Mitch
I saw,
has been in
Mitch
here.
was in there, yeah.
Mitch poked his head in.
Absolutely. They've been tossing out some questions, some ideas. I know, as an example, Girk had talked about how it's really fun or really interesting to find those soundtracks for Deadlands, and I can imagine like that would be a lot of fun. That's a
That would
theme
be-
that I
boy.
haven't got. Yeah,
Like spaghetti
Yeah.
western music. Like
Yeah.
all the good,
Yeah.
the bad, the ugly.
I guess that would
Fistful
just
of
be playing all
dollars.
the time
Yeah.
for me. Just
yeah.
that.
So yeah, I want to really appreciate the additions to the conversation there. Thanks to Troy. Thanks to John for hanging out with me yet again. And until next week, we'll see you next time.
Have a great game, everybody,
Everybody stay safe out there.
and not chafed.
And unchaste or unchafed?
Yes.
Both. Why not both? Don't be chafed while
Why not?
you're chased.
Chafe. All right. That was I got to rename the episode now because I thought we were doing the other one first, but that's okay.
So, okay,
Well,
so
you
what
know
was our
what?
time on that though? I'm curious about this. Drum roll, please.
I feel like we hit about 45, 50 minutes. That's what I'm feeling.
That's good. That's solid. We start. Well, I don't think. I think
Yeah.
you're right. It's probably like 40 because I think we started at the 20-minute point on my timer.
If we started at the 20-minute mark, then yeah, we're at 42 minutes.
Right on.
43 is. All
Look at
right, there you
that.
go.
All right.
Ish. Yeah.
That'll work.
Who'd have thought?
Cool. Well, let's roll right into the next one.
let's do it.
Let's not give any pause. You will notice, chat, that we did not give our usual sign-offs of going to Discord, going to Facebook. There's going to be some of that lurking still in the podcast, but we're trying to, cook some of that in a more.
We are
efficient
trying to.
capacity.
We are continually striving to be even
You know what?
more professional.
Don't
than
jinx
what
it.
we are.
Oh, you jinxed it. You jinxed
We're
it.
we're
What?
it's one of our core philosophies here that we're always improving.
That's right.
Mhm. That's it.
Always,
Yeah.
always improving. Even when we're backsliding, we're improving.
Even our de-evolution is an evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
All right, let's do this in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to the Bite Size Gaming Podcast, the podcast that's serving up a buffet of RPG topics to get you through your week. My name is Zach, and the host joining me this evening is the Dwarven DM, John Christian,
Hey!
and the Dapper DM, Troy Sandlin.
Ho ho!
Oh, all right.
What?
I just turned into
Suddenly
like
turned
a
into, like-
60s radio disc jockey, man.
I
All
know.
right. Spinning the wax.
Coming back to you live.
Oh, yeah.
It's Wolfman John.
That's terrible. I do look like a
Yeah,
wolfman these
Kirk's
days.
like, oh my.
Okay,
boy.
so we're gonna get off the rails right out the gate here.
Mm-hmm.
There is a new show on Netflix that you guys remind me of at this point.
That's frightening.
Have either one of you checked out? I'm gonna pull it up here so I get the name right. Boop, 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 boop. Have either one of you checked out?
Derailed.
It's called like Swap Shop.
Dude.
I think it's from your neck of the woods, John.
Oh, boy.
I'm sure we all have these types of things, these shows in our neck of the woods. But I think in this one it's actually from, I want to say it's from Tennessee actually.
Is it like a pawn
but-
shop type thing? Or?
No, it's like, okay, so I had this. It was called the Trading Post, Saturday Morning Trading Post.
Okay.
But it's a radio program where people called in and they're like, "Hey y'all, I got a set of kids' bikes that I'm not using anymore, and
That's awesome. Hey, my
Hey,
mom
y'all.
ain't using her liver no more, man. You got anybody out there needs
That's right.
one? You got
Right,
any
like-
liver?
That's black market.
That's black market.
you know, or they'd be like, yeah, I've got a 97 Civic that runs good, and I'm looking to trade it for either some firearms or a motorcycle. Anyhow, you can give me a
Always
call.
firearms.
Like,
Always firearms.
yeah,
Always.
like so.
Yeah, I got no hot
so-
water heater back there, man. If anybody wants
Yep,
to trade
yep.
it for a Ruger, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. So I'm taking it that you understand what I'm talking
I
about.
do
now.
understand what you're talking about. Sadly,
Yeah.
though I do not run
Yeah.
in those circles, I am familiar.
So there is a show on Netflix called Swap Shop, which evidently Swap Shop is something from that area of the U.S. And it's very much like an American Pickers or something like that
Mhm.
sort of
Yeah.
idea, but they follow like different groups of people as they listen to the radio when they hear like, "Hey, I've got a yard sale and it's full of furniture and blah blah blah," and then they're like, "Let's go to that yard sale," and that they follow them and whatever they get, right? Like,
My grandmama's
Anyhow.
Ouija board is in there somewhere, I think.
yeah,
That's
She communicated
It's
with the
delightful.
devil when I was a child.
No. now you all are getting a glimpse at the kind of vocal acting you can expect when you play at either John or Zach's tables.
that's right, that's right.
You know what? Hey, I know what Zach is doing. Zach is he's prepping for his Cthulhu Appalachia
That's right.
adventure. That's what he's
Dark
doing.
No,
Gods of
no.
Appalachia.
It's my vampire of the Masquerade, Backwoods by Night. That's what it's called.
Backwoods by night.
Yeah, that's the dream right there, fellows.
Is
I
that
would love
is
to
that a
run.
thing?
Well, so there's all these
It is
shows
now.
and books out there called like Chicago by Night, L.A.
Yeah.
by Night, Seattle by Night, and as I was like considering what would Zach's version of that be?
Oh
I'm like,
man.
Backwoods by
I
night.
used to live like 20-ish miles from the Oklahoma, well, not even that, like 5 miles from the Oklahoma line, just about an hour away from Tiger King territory, right?
Oh boy.
And in the heart of that territory, even though I was, it's all the same. I'm like, Zach would run a Backwoods by Night, and it
Ogre
would be
by
like,
night.
Effing basket.
yeah,
Hillfolk by night.
yeah,
The thing that was
it's gonna
not
be
Zach.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And-
gonna be
and-
great.
Bear Droid, you're right. This is what happens when we've stayed on track for 45 minutes.
It's true.
Yes.
We get the wiggles.
Yeah.
Rails? What rails?
Well, so anyhow, that we had to go there.
Apparently.
Let's get into our news topic for today, and then we can mosey
We have news?
from there. We do. We have one piece of news.
Yes, we do.
John, you brought this up, and I don't think it'll be a long discussion, but we got to talk about it. Go ahead,
We do.
fire away.
Yeah, Cortex released their fan license. With Cortex, for those that are unfamiliar, Cortex Prime is a game system that can be utilized, and they're also the owner of D&D Beyond. The announcement was greeted with some consternation from the community recently, because essentially it grants ownership of any of the mechanics. The community license grants ownership of any of the mechanics created under the license. The fandom can terminate the license at any time, etc., etc. But it grants them rights to only specific parts of the content, but not to others. So effectively, it makes it pretty useless whenever you try to use it in any kind of a practical standpoint. If you want, you can also not. Your fan creations cannot be distributed through DriveThruRPG, itch.io, because those platforms grant them rights to specific parts of the content, including content that the community license does not grant you the rights to. So, long story short, it's almost pointless. Like, why did you even bother putting this out there as an open gaming license type of, for people? Essentially, what you're doing is you're granting people permission to create homebrew for their home games, but not to actually sell anything.
Well, and you can post it on their website if you want, wherein they have the freedom to take anything that you write on there and put it in their books and not credit you.
Yep.
Which is not dissimilar from like what DM's Guild does, right? Like if you put something on DM's Guild, WotC owns it, they can do whatever they want to with it, and they don't have to credit you for it. So similar statement, but at least with, there's just it's just weird. Just weird.
It caused a lot of frustration. That it's actually they almost published it as if it were an OGL or were an open gaming license, but it's actually not. It was so restrictive that it just didn't serve any purpose whatsoever. So, like, what's the point? Why did you even bother? It's almost like a publicity stunt or something.
It's tricky, right? Like, I don't understand. Like, somebody wrote in the comment section, they said, when if and when I write a license for my thing, for my RPG, it's going to basically say, if you write something compatible with my game, I will love you forever. And I'm like, that's way more the statement that needs to be made with these like non-D&D licenses is like, we want to empower you to weld yourself to us. Not if you want to mess with our tiny thing, here's all the hoops that you need to jump through and roadblocks that you're going to have to come up short against, right?
Yeah.
Now, look, all that said, though, I mean, if that's the way that they want to run their license, then sure.
It's up to them. Like it's.
I don't see people using it.
No, they won't use it at this rate, and that's a shame because I think I think it has the potential to be a really interesting system. I know they've been kind of noodling with it and things. I think it could be cool, and it's got a bunch of money behind it, so It can be heavily developed. It can be heavily play tested. It could be one of those systems that runs with the big dogs, but it's not going to if this is the way they're going to handle it.
Yeah, instead of like making it seem like it's a rebuke against the folks that are publishing it, let it be more of a challenge. That I challenge you to give it the college try of making it more in line with an OGL and see if you'll get more distance out of doing it that way, as opposed to, providing kind of like, it's almost like I don't know. It's just not enough, right, for it to be worth putting out there in the mind's eye. And I think it's put more of a darker color on what they were trying to do as a result of it. It's kind of a black eye. Maybe it's not that big to some, but it just seems like the community is kind of pushing back as a result of it. So it seems like a miss. It's a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope they can kind of recover from it and maybe do a little bit better. Just because I would like to see this system flourish. Some of the stuff I've heard is coming down the pike with Cortex, I find interesting. Would like to take a look at, but yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Bear Droid's exactly right. Putting out nothing would have been better than this. Unfortunately, they have been promising this license for quite some time, so they needed to crank out something to fulfill an obligation from their Kickstarter.
Yeah,
awesome.
Here's our open gaming license that we don't want you to use.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you do
there's
use
a
it,
lot
there's
of
a risk of you losing what you created.
Yeah.
Or it being not losing it necessarily, but it being utilized.
Here's the thing, like
credit.
the big Twitter is obviously the place where this is on fire.
Yeah. Well, surprise.
But really, like, even if you go to their comment, like, nobody's happy about this, but this is not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that I took a step back and said, okay, wait, Cortex Prime, nobody cares about. It's like, there's probably a handful of people in the world that's their favorite system. There's an even smaller handful of people who are actively looking at creating content for it. So this hurts basically no one right now. And so hopefully they can just kind of take the feedback, make a few changes, move on. There's not somebody, I don't think, waiting in the wings with like a 400-page tome that they were planning on releasing under some sort of license, and now they can't.
That would be the next big thing. The D&D killer.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So it's interesting, but my hope is that this was a rough first pass, and they'll come back with something different, and we can move on from there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is all right. So we'll put a quick note in this. This would be a way bigger deal if WotC does something. Let's say WotC does a new license for 5.5 or 6E or whatever it is in 2024. That will be a huge deal. If it reads like this, and it's for their system that has 1 billion people already lining up at the gate to crank out a product that is some way aligned with the new way of doing things, and they put out that will be rough. But unless it's them doing that, I don't think this is a small batch.
A storm that's a tea kettle.
That's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
A whole different episode there.
Exactly. So that's our news for today. Let's move on. I think that was short enough. We don't even need a refill on our drinks at the moment. So let's dive right in. Today we're going to be talking about, Troy, you pitched this one, I think.
I did.
Campaign restrictions. We're kind of moving back in, believe it or not, to almost I think this very much is a D&D topic, right? The last several things that we've done have been very system agnostic or even heavily slated towards other systems. This is a D&D thing. There's obviously you could make an argument for Pathfinder and things, but we're all going to be using D&D examples, and there's plenty of systems that this would not apply to. So Troy, you said that by campaign restrictions, what you're specifically talking about here, what we're going to be chatting about is in that session 0 or whenever, when the DM says for your characters there is a limitation on what you can make.
Yes.
It is not the sky's the limit. There is a limit, and it is somewhere below the sky.
Yeah, somewhere.
Right. And I think the goal here is to chat about, like, are limitations ever acceptable? When are they acceptable? What sorts of limitations have you imposed before? That's the sort of things we're going for here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Well, why don't you start us off? Talk to us about your thoughts on it.
I'm hugely in favor of restrictions.
Because you hate your players.
Well, there's that. I mean, if I can't
You don't
torment
want
them.
fun.
If I can't torment them with dog giggles in every game, I want to torment them by limiting their choices for characters and such. No, I just feel like one of the things in Adventures League, and when you sign up to run games for Adventures League, you kind of have to just be like, okay, I have to accept whatever comes across the table. I personally, if I'm running a home game that I am, the players are my friends, or I've curated the group, or whatever it might be, I am looking for a particular type of experience. And, whatever the case may be, maybe I've created this adventure or this storyline or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, hey, we're at the session 0. It's like, so before anybody makes their characters, I just want to let you know you can only be dwarves and gnomes for this. And, well, why? Well, because it's set in this dwarven city. They're very xenophobic, and that's all I'm going to tell you. You can only be dwarves and gnomes. I personally, I think that's kind of cool, and I hear a lot of times, well, that takes away player agency. That's way too restrictive and stuff like that. I feel that giving players restrictions on what they can create for their characters actually opens up creativity even more, because it gives you a platform to build from. Instead of sitting down at the table and saying, okay, whatever you bring is fine, I will figure out how it all fits in. So now you've got Craig coming to the table as a T-Rex, and somebody else is a living tree, and somebody else is, oh well, I came from Mars or whatever. It's like, oh crap,
Building the Guardians of the Galaxy now? Is that what we're...
in Forgotten Realms, it's like, well, I was going to do Descent into Avernus, but now I've got this insanely weird group that if they walk through the streets of any Forgotten Realms city, everybody's just going to stop and stare, or even just attack outright, just because but in Adventures, like, you basically have to be open to that, because you never know what you're going to get in Adventures League, and you just kind of have to let the Gonzo fly.
That's interesting. The last big Forgotten Realms campaign that I did, I said anything goes. And basically when I do Forgotten Realms, that's my, like, anything goes sort of statement. I think I'm probably done with that, though. And it's not that I've had a bad time with it, but it's exactly what you just said. It's really... I think what it does is, when you have a party that is 16, like the 6 weirdest creatures on the Forgotten Realms, and they're all smashed together, it's like, I can't throw anything weirder than what you are, right? There's goblins near the town. You are a devil and a drow and an orc and an elephant man.
Yeah.
People are going to be way more worked up about you guys than they are the goblins next door.
And even if they're not, like, worked up with you, like, they're there's like bigoted or they don't trust you or anything like that. They don't know how to deal with you. And there are so many, like, there could be cultural differences between you and them, or the way that the way that they perceive you. Like, in Forgotten Realms, you know, at least once upon a time, orcs would run raids against towns, and so there's a reputation that precedes you that may, or like Drow, same thing, right? So when if it's one or two players that have chosen a character that's like that, but you got some straights in there, so to speak, some like straight arrows, some humans. You got like mostly humans otherwise. You can kind of like you could explain it away a bit, or it's easier to kind of mingle in there as opposed to everybody's a weirdo.
Yep. You know what? You know what I found though is really helpful to start this conversation off with. I make a document. I did this for both the Middle Earth games, and it worked really well. I make a document that is not, you can't do this, you can't do this. Instead, I make a document that says, here are the things you can do. And so for Middle Earth, I said, here are the races that you can play, and here are the classes that you can play for each one of those races, and here are the subclasses that will be accessible to you for each one of those. And there's a ton of options on that document. It looks impressive. On the back end, I cut out like 3/4 of the official WotC. I cut out 90% of the races, but I cut out 3/4 of the class and subclass options, right? But it still looks cool. I got to throw in some weird ones there, right? Like I grabbed Oath of Glory from Theros, right? Like if I would have just said like no, only core content or player's handbook content, I wouldn't have had that. But like you can grab some cool stuff from this place and the other as long as it fits the theme. I think that that's a much better way of approaching it than saying like, here's all these restrictions. Reflavor it as
Here's your options.
Here's your options, and make it exciting. And then I always put a caveat at the end that's like, this should kind of like help you understand what we're going for with this campaign. If you have an idea that's slightly different than this for your character, you can message me. And I have had people take me up on that, right? Like, I say, oh, I think it. But again, we're creating a framework, and we're giving them 50 examples of a great character that will fit well. And so typically when they come after that and they're like, oh, I want to play. I know you said that we could only play one of these two schools of wizardry, but I kind of had an idea for this other one. And here's how I could see it working slightly differently and why I think it fits. That's a great conversation that I'm happy to have.
Yeah.
Well, so for me, I'll step up and I'll talk about mine. Mine is really setting specific. You know, whether it's Athas with Dark Sun or Dragonlance with the limitations that come from it. Even Ravenloft, really. If you were from Ravenloft, you can kind of you can make the excuse a bit with Ravenloft of being more having more options, at least with races and things like that, because there are so many creatures that are coming in through the mists. Maybe you've been lost or marooned there for a while, but like I'll use obviously Dragonlance is the elephant in the room, so I'll use that one. For me, there are racial limitations, right, that are just based on the setting. There are no tieflings in Dragonlance. There are no halflings in Dragonlance. There are Kinder, and so instead of a restriction, you get an alternative, right? For dwarves, you get extra options. You get gully dwarves or whatever. But the thing is, I go even further than that, though. Sometimes it depends on the party, right? The players that I've got. How into Dragonlance are they? How by the quote unquote book are they cool with running the adventure with? Because humans are the dominant race on Krynn. As a result, I have it to where other races are reclusive, and since the Age of Despair, and so only half of the party can be made up of non-human characters. Because kind of going back to that, like only have one drow and one orc or two orcs or one goblin or whatever, and then everybody else has to be something that's quote unquote normal, like a more accessible race, I guess, than anything else. Those are restrictions, and then of course in Dragonlance you've got restrictions on classes. There's like only artificers can only be played by gnomes. Bards are restricted. Clerics, depending on the age that you're in. If you're playing during the War of the Lance, you are pre-War of the Lance, then you don't have any clerical powers. So you'll effectively be like a fighter at best or whatever, right? There are no warlocks are restricted or prohibited because warlocks are all evil in Dragonlance. There's a lot of restrictions on being a wizard in Dragonlance. A lot of cool things that come with it, with moon magic and whatnot. And then paladins, man, you got to really have a awesome idea to have a paladin in Dragonlance, because you have a giant target on your back if you're a paladin in Dragonlance. So there's a ton that are in there, but again, it really boils down to the kind of game that I would like to play, or I'd like to run, and the story that I'd like to run, the setting I'd like to run it in, and then that session 0 is sitting down with the players and being like, hey, are you guys willing to play in this kind of a thing? Are you cool with that? Yes, no? Okay, well, if not, that's what I want to run. What does somebody else want to run? Because that's kind of like where my heart's at right now. And I'm not going to be upset if I can't play it or can't run it, but I'm just not really excited about anything else, so I'll give up my seat at the head of the table and let anybody else run whatever they want to instead.
Yeah. Because that's the one thing, like you said, tieflings don't exist on Krynn, and I miss that. That's one of those things as because Planescape. And Planescape, makes sense.
Sure.
Plane touched. You had Aasimar and you had tieflings. And now, suddenly...
They're everywhere.
And it's like, well...
And people are cool with them.
Well, there's an implication, right? Like, if there's a tiefling on every street corner, then in my mind it's like, oh, well, this plane is, like, that's part of your lore or whatever. Like, sure. But like, what gets me is, like, if there's a tiefling on every street corner, but Aasimar, like, really rare. I'm like,
yeah.
All right, yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah.
Well, I'll even go one further. Outside of just races and classes, something it's a standard in every single game that I run. I don't do evil characters at my tables. I just don't. No evil at all. And it's not like you may have a really, really cool idea or a neat thing. That's not an element in my table that I'm comfortable with. I've made exceptions. I don't want to speak definitively, but I've made some exceptions in the past. But play it the way that you and I agreed to, or the way that I said that I was comfortable with you playing a character. Then maybe unless there's growth, right, and there have to be limitations, and it can only be lawful evil. That is the only like chaotic and neutral. That's not happening at my table, like, ever.
I go so far as I do not like chaotic neutral, because to me chaotic neutral is the most abused alignment.
Yep, absolutely.
Out there, because they're always like, well, I'm chaotic neutral. I'm just crazy. Yeah. I do whatever. It's like, no, you're chaotic neutral because you want to be an asshole at my table.
Right.
And you want to
You're going to use the Wangrod defense, aren't you?
Yeah. And if that's what you want to do, if you're here to destroy my campaign, why are you here?
Yeah, I mean, so let's say I'll play the devil's advocate here, for both. I have had a really interesting arc with a lawful evil character in one of my bigger campaigns that went like a year and a half, and he did not go good, right? He was interested in resurrecting a dead god. That was his character. It was tied in a bit with the campaign, with the story, yada yada yada. He was very reasonable with the party. It's just that when pushed, like what he was building wealth for, what he was when he was doing research or whatever, it was, I'm trying to figure out this dead god thing, and it was interesting and it worked out pretty well. So I'd say like especially lawful evils can sometimes be interesting, and as long as they're a reasonable player, they can get along with the party 95% of the time, and that 5% can be really interesting when it comes down to you made this connection with these people, with the rest of your party, and you've enjoyed adventuring with them, but now it's come to the point where you have to make a choice. Like, that's interesting. Is it going to be a tragedy, or is it going to be like an epic, shift? And chaotic neutral, I would say, real quick as a note, and I agree, John, that these are almost always a mess. But I would say that there is something when a player wants to be chaotic neutral. I think sometimes he doesn't know who he is, or whoever, she doesn't know who she is, or whatever you want to say, and she's a kid, or she's she's recently, or he's recently freed from being in the slave pits, or whatever, like whatever the thing is, and so they are in the infancy of the freedom of being an adventurer, right? And that interprets as chaotic neutral, right? You don't have a cause,
right?
or
Conan
whatever, right?
could be considered chaotic neutral, right?
Yeah, if that's the way it's presented, that's one thing, but rarely is it that's the way it's presented. It's always, oh, I'm off my rocker.
I have to trust the player and have to see the
kind of a
player.
thing.
Like the player has, like I've seen the player play and the kind of other characters that they've been willing to. Like they have just to cause trouble and to stir the pot. Like if I can see them play other stuff, then I'll be more apt to not. I have not restricted chaotic neutral, but it's one of those things where I'm like, I cringe every single time somebody goes for it.
So, and a lot of times when I do restrictions, I'm not just doing it for me. I'm also doing it for the players. And by that I mean, if I am going to run, if I'm going to run that game I just mentioned, everybody's a dwarf or a gnome because they're in this setting, and that's they're going to be in the mines. They're going to be digging deep, and somebody comes to the table and says, "Oh, I'm going to be an Elven Ranger, Horizon Walker." Why? Because I just told you to do.
That is a good point. I was just thinking about that with a character in a campaign. I won't say whether it was a recent campaign or a current one, or a thinking cap on. I would have helped steer them towards a character that would have fit this better for their sake. Sometimes you don't know, right? Like
sometimes you're kind of like, whatever.
Or you're like, oh yeah, that seems reasonable, and then you get halfway into it, and you're like, nope, wasn't reasonable. It didn't work like the way that I thought it would. Or it's like, oh, I thought this would be perfect, and then the campaign took a left turn, and now something that was perfect has no real place to belong.
Right.
So there's some weird stuff there for sure. I guess I'm saying it's not an exact science. You can't build the perfect set of restrictions at the beginning that safeguards you from having any characters that don't fit the story.
Well, I mean, even like my son Gabriel saw that with thought it was going to be a really cool thing to play a lawful neutral character, but it wasn't the alignment that restricted him. It was kind of his outlook on things. He was driven by one singular goal and purpose, but what that ended up doing is it was out of alignment with the rest of the party. It wasn't evil and it wasn't bad. He was not, everything that he was doing was fine, but he was willing to, it wasn't about he wanted to sacrifice anyone else for it, but he's like, the mission is more important than anything else. And there's a reason why that I was sent to do this. And I'm willing to leave you all in a lurch if I have to, in order to make sure that I don't die and the MacGuffin that I've got in tow doesn't end up in the enemy's hands or whatever, right? So sometimes it's just about motivations as opposed to an alignment or whatever.
Yep. Oh man, that is a true statement. That is all right. I'm gonna give a nod here to WotC. Their idea about group patrons is a win. Is a win. Also, I'll give a nod to our friend David Barrentine, and his idea about guilds is a win. finding that way to unify your party for a specific agenda, even if it's not like they're not all 100% on board, but if everybody's at least 60% on board with that guild or that patron or whatever, boy, it makes things way better. It's incredible how much the experience improves if in that first session when you all sit down to play, you're like, all right, you're not all meeting in a tavern randomly, but instead you've all been summoned to the guild hall, and you're the court. You're being
do it.
And those
Go
are
do
just the whole guild and patron concept is nothing. It's not I think what it is it's a way to formulate a thing that we should a glue that keeps for the campaign, but for the party, right? It's like you guys are going to disagree with one another at some point. The paladin's not going to want to bring them to justice by the sword through their back. They're going to want to have them at the end of a noose after they've gone through, the judicial system, right? And so, but at one point or another, when you have those friendly disputes between your characters, it's a thing that keeps you from going Wild West on one another and having to put somebody down. Or one or the other, right? And it also keeps you from riding off the rails on motivations. Like we're supposed to be saving, whatever. Like we're supposed to be saving the dragon eggs from being corrupted and turned into draconies or something like that. No. I have this motivation that's over here. Well, no. This is our mission over here. Well, what's telling me to do that mission? Is it the knighthood or whatever, right?
And I'll go back that you all have the same motivations. What it means is that you have the same driving force for the party, right? So the party can be told as they were there, you all are going to go explore X, or you're going to go solve or find X, right? Now, some people are going to be gung-ho about that, and that is exactly what they want to do. Some people are going to be like, it's the next thing on the checklist, I'll check this box and then I'll move on to the next thing. And some people are going to be like, I'm only doing this because the guild told me that I had to. Right. I'm going to complain the whole way. All of those are fine. Like, and they all, that inter-party dynamic and almost like pseudo-conflict of like the difference in...
But you all have the same, you have a baseline commitment.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. You have a baseline commitment, and then you have varying degrees of like complaint that you assign to the commitment that you've made in the first.
To like, something not quite in the restriction side of things by talking about pay. The same thing, but is there anything other than like here's something that I wonder. Do you guys restrict magic items? Do you restrict certain types of equipment? Do you restrict resources?
Spells.
And spells.
Oh wow,
yep.
Really?
Yep.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay, sure. Resurrection. Spells, right?
Yeah,
I've done that before. Like it really depends on the story. But would I? Yes, yeah. It depends on the narrative. It depends on, like, what does the restriction introduce that makes it really interesting? Is the way that I try to look at it. Not a restriction for the sake of a restriction, but like this is cool because of X, Y, Z. If I don't have resurrections in this, then what that does is it introduces a level of risk versus reward that players really have to think about, or they're gonna.
To me, it's like Athos, Dark Sun. Mm-hmm. There's no metal. There's metal is precious.
Absolutely.
So you don't have plate mail and things like that. Mm-hmm. And what I don't like is when they go, okay, well we'll just Wizards or whoever comes up with, well, we don't have metal plate mail armor, but we have the equivalent and it's made out. It's like, no.
Chitin.
No.
Chitin, yeah.
You don't have it. I'm sorry, it's not there. If you have a plate mail armor made out of chitin, fine, but it does not give you the same thing that plate mail does. Mm-hmm. It gives you scale mail or something like that.
Yeah, I've done that with.
You just don't have it.
Yeah, and I've done again. I hate to go back to the same well, but I've done that with Dutch Dragonlance too, right? Like steel and iron are higher valued commodities in the Krynnish economy post-war, Age of Despair, and as a result, whenever you use this, there should be more of a scarcity assigned to it also. So as a result, there's I try not to penalize the players too much with the cost of the stuff, but the accessibility of things that have metal in them are going to be. It's going to have a harder time finding plate mail enough.
Yeah. Here's another aspect to that. I just got done writing a Mayan-inspired setting book,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of equipment that you can't. I think the next thing that you do, and this goes back to opening up opportunities and saying yes and saying here's what's available instead of keeping it negative, is once you put all these restrictions, you say, oh well, are there things that make sense instead of, right? So that, I could say like no metal weapons and you can just use clubs and spears and blah blah blah. But if once you sit down and do the research, you're like, oh, well, there's actually these other 8 weapons,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this. Now we're gonna like, it's changing out the magnification, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because we're not way out here looking at everything. We're zoomed in on a specific type of thing. We can see all this minutia of differences, and that can be really fun. It's like, oh well, I did like you can't have that on the most underutilized weapon in D&D, which is the blowgun, and we're gonna give some fascinating uses for it
Mm-hmm.
because it's one of a few ranged weapons, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I like that.
Yeah, Bear Droid's asking if we've done any restrictions based on like everybody has to be the same thing before.
Hmm.
What I've done is have not restricted players before. Well, I've motivated them towards what I really wanted them to do in the first place by giving them rewards if they did the thing that I wanted them to do. Like, I'm not going to restrict
Hmm.
whether or not you're going to be an elf or a human or what dwarves. Oh, then you get this and this and this and this and this too, because then your clan holder is going to give you X, Y, Z, or you're going to have like this training. Da, da, da. Like when we ran Storm
Get it,
King's
John.
Thunder.
You love dwarves,
I
right?
know it's the beard and it's the title, whatever. I'm unashamed.
It,
But when in Storm King's Thunder, my players, it was a team of dwarves, and dude, they had a blast because they went back and they kind of read the vibe of like the Hobbit movies and
Hmm.
the books, right? Of like created their own unique kind of brand for themselves and character for themselves, but they're all the same people,
Yeah.
right? Those are
Yeah.
humans over there, or those are elves over there, and I don't hate them or dislike them or anything like that. But you know what? We're kin. Like you're a dwarf and I'm a dwarf, and you don't
Yeah.
go against the blood, that kind of thing, right? With the
yeah.
dwarves and stuff like that. So it was a really good motivator for them to keep the party together, even in the middle of their arguments too.
There's a couple of notes that I would give for Bear Droid on same class. I did a Batman campaign where everybody was different things of rogues, and it was just a few session long
Mm-hmm.
campaign, um, like fantasy Batman. That was fun. And then WotC had a great pairs, and every warlock was chained to a paladin.
Yep.
Um, and that was cool, really cool. So I think the only one that I've seriously considered doing as a full fleshed out campaign, which if you listen to our previous episode, probably is never going to happen at this point, but is a wizard school,
Yeah.
and to say like you can be any wizard class, but you
Man,
have to play a wizard.
Heck yeah,
if
or a
only
cleric,
there was a if only there was a
Only there was a
book that
book.
came out.
right?
Yeah.
Some other DMs I know have, and it's a group that they're all wizards,
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
and I think, and there's probably several different groups that are like this, but this group, they were all named Meepo.
Oh my god, that sounds
Right.
And
horrifying.
yes, and they just raffle stomp everything because I mean they're just like laying out all of this massive magical firepower all the time, and they all refer to themselves as Meepo as they play, and they don't break character. Um, and the my buddies was like that was some of the most fun they have ever had, just having
Hmm.
the adventure stomped
Well, I think
is
all of
because
us
yeah.
I think all of us that have run games for at Winter Fantasy have heard of the all barbarian party. Are hilarious to play with,
Yeah.
but they were all still unique and they all had their own kind of fun. But there was this synergy between them that was really cool to
Yeah.
watch, even though they were all the exact same thing on
And
Yeah.
paper.
yeah, don't they like draw straws or whatever to see who's going to set off the trap?
Yep. Yep.
Things like
Hmm.
that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would love to do something like that. As a campaign, it's like yes, everybody is all one class or all, or all. You have to all be a martial class
Hmm.
or something like restrictions that you place in on a game that are not good?
Hmm.
Can you go too far?
You can absolutely go too far.
Sure, of course.
You can absolutely go far. I think it goes too far when it becomes less. This is the themes of the campaign, and it becomes these are the types of characters that I want in my story.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference would be, let's use Storm King's Thunder, and maybe you say, I think that for this Storm King's Thunder, we're gonna do classic fantasy. So that means we're gonna do only the classic fantasy races that have been with us from the dawn of D&D, right,
Mhm.
or close to it. Everybody can kind of understand that and whatnot. But if you say, and I think that's a restriction that people can probably live by. I think though, when you start to say, you know, everybody has to play. You have to have one. You have to have one dwarf, one elf, one human, one halfling, and the halfling has to be a thief, and the blah blah blah. Like
Mhm.
when you get down to like that minutia of like kind of directing how the characters are going to be presented within the story, I think you've gone too far.
Right. I agree. I mean,
What
anything
about
can be taken
what about
too far.
pre-gens then? Doesn't that fall into the realm of pre-gens? Like
It
if,
does,
if I say,
but
hey,
but
we're gonna have a
but
campaign
there's
and
a,
I've already got the characters
but
made.
there's a specific utility assigned to a pre-gen. You know, instead of like this is a home game that we're going to play as on the regular, as opposed to I'm going to teach you a system. That's really what pre-gens are kind of there for. Or that either
Well,
for. Go ahead.
mm,
Okay, you know what?
I
No,
think I would
I will immediately go back on it because we had a discussion before of like sometimes you have kind of like the A team that's like built the story is built around and like who wants Murdoch, who wants BA, who wants
I think the difference, right, is that pre-gens are a term that we can all accept, and we can choose to do pre-gens or we cannot choose to do pre-gens, and we know what we're doing, right?
yeah.
If you say I can create a character, but then you can create a character, and what I mean by that is you can pick one of these three backgrounds.
Right.
That's where like there's a miscommunication. I'm probably down to play whatever pre-gen you want me to play. Like if that's the game we're running. But you've communicated from the gate that building a character isn't part of my play experience here. But I think that's the difference for me. I think that's the difference.
That's true. Yeah, that could be. That could be. I could get down with that. Because yeah, I one of the things I have considered doing, because again, I don't like the crazy race bloat, species bloat that we get. Because I like the traditional
Mhm.
races.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start throwing in Dragonborn and Tiefling and stuff like that, then it becomes more like the Cantina scene in Star Wars and not, the scene from the Prince of Coney and Bree.
Sure, but that has its place too.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Yeah, yeah. Again, it's like if we want to go do a Gonzo campaign, yeah, whatever. So I had thought about doing something, maybe saying, okay, if you want to be plain touched, that's fine. You're human. You look human. You might have some strange characteristics, but for whatever reason you're plain touched, which now you can actually be a Genasi of some kind. You can be an Asimar of some kind. You can be a Tiefling of some kind, but you look mostly human.
Mm-hmm.
Or in my Eberron campaign, somebody was thinking about being a Tabaxi. And I said, okay, but I'm going to say you're not a Tabaxi, you're a shifter. Now, you don't have to use the shifter race. You can be the Tabaxi, but you're not going to be called a Tabaxi. You're going to be called a shifter.
Mm-hmm.
And because I thought that made sense because, well, they're kind of
Yeah.
shifters are kind of like that kind of
Yeah.
hybrid were creature,
Mhm.
tabaxi, anthropomorphized cat person.
Hmm.
But there was kind of a, well, but I don't want to be a shifter. I want to be a tabaxi. Well, you are a tabaxi. You're just going to be called a shifter. Kind of just ways of justifying in my headcanon how I want things to be. Because I didn't want just a whole crap ton of extra races to worry about. Because then, if you want the big freaky melting pot, that's fine. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do a lot of that. It's like, yeah, all races are open. Go for it. I don't care. Other times it might be, for whatever reason, there's a particular flavor that I would rather have. And, if I'm going to open it up, yeah, all races are open with this caveat of, but you're actually one of the quote unquote normal races.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think with that, I think we've covered a lot of different angles, restrictions. I think in summary, I think what you should get from this is, especially if you are building, and almost every campaign is this, if you're building a campaign that is set in a specific setting, finding ways of encouraging your players to fit within that setting's parameters is important, especially as we get 40 more races and 40 more everything. But I think we've all said this several times at this point, talking to your players, making sure that that's the game that they want to play, that's the setting that they want. Like if everyone is gung-ho about Eberron, it's really easy to put up restrictions. If you're the only person who cares about Eberron, it's really hard to justify Eberron-only restrictions. All right. So with that, I'm going to encourage folks to continue this conversation on Discord. Bear Droid and everyone else who's been a part of the show. John, Troy, thanks for hanging out with me again. And until next week, we'll see you next time.
Have a great game, everybody.
And stay safe.
Now, Craig asked a question that we should touch on before we close out. This is a great question. Craig asked, the Fellowship with a what? What would be the weirdest?
What would be the weirdest in Middle Earth? Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, it's got. I'm assuming the Fellowship. He certainly means Middle Earth there. So, I think if you had to pick a D&D race to insert in as like the 10th member of the Fellowship, what would be the weirdest?
I was thinking, what would be the weirdest race that you would allow that came from the Middle Earth?
Oh, that's interesting.
A dual scimitar wielding orc. There you go. Called. Was it a Woad or a Wos? Woses? In Middle Earth?
I know. Which was like a. Is it
more like a Neanderthal type?
No,
they're more like a Neanderthal type.
Oh, I understand.
No, there's the wildlings. Yeah.
Wildlings.
The men of Dunlandings, right?
Yep.
Are you sure? Because I thought there was something like Wodes or Woses from, and I got this from Middle Earth role playing, because I had a whole bunch of that at one point.
Really?
I mean, honestly, Craig, if we're talking about what would look the weirdest in the Fellowship, like
a Dragonborn,
a Warforged
Tiefling.
No, yes, but also like think about like a what is the new rabbit race? Can you imagine like a Harengon?
What the hell happened?
Like standing next to Aragorn? I would
honestly,
be like, no.
I could see a Harengon before I could see a Warforged or a Tiefling.
Yeah, but a Harengon is like some Hollywood focus group said, you know what kids really like these days? bunny rabbits. You know what we should do? We should put
Well-
one in there so we can sell toys.
No, you're right. Okay, so as a quick note, they are called woses
Oh,
for your benefit, Troy.
that is-
But they are the Druidane, which are very they're like the men who kind of like disappeared after the first into the second age. They never went to Numenor, and they kind of just like disappeared into the woods and
Yes,
wilds.
but they were kind of Neanderthalithic, right? Kind of like bulkier, sloped head, thick brow.
Yep. They call them. Oh yeah. They called them Pukelmen.
Yes, Pukelman.
Yeah, Pukelmen.
that sounds horrific.
I would say for me, like the Harengon in the Fellowship could be justified just because of Radagast.
I'll even go one further. How about not Radagast? How about Bjorn?
That there, yeah, like
And
some,
maybe they
somehow
polymorph.
one of these, not like an actual race or an actual being that looks like that.
Tom
Kind of like
Bombadil.
somehow
I can see that.
this being was raised, this rabbit was raised up,
Mhm.
awakened, so to speak. Yeah, Tom Bombadil could have done it or something like that, or and gave it intelligence and speech, and it would be, to me, it's not a race of creature, it's a unique creature.
Well, it's essentially what like the Urukai. It's a created creature.
Yeah, but only one, kind of like a golem or
Mhm.
golem, where it was changed or warped or whatever. Yeah, they had
It's a
Groot,
rocket.
so.
It's a rocket raccoon.
Yeah. I
Ain't
think
nobody
it's gonna
like
be-
me but me.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. Like I think as far as like the official races, I would say for me, it's either Herringons or it's Loxodons. As like
Loxodon would be like
don't like that.
bananas.
Don't like that.
So
Because like, yeah,
you'd
I
be
could
okay with a dragonborn.
more okay.
Yeah, because there are dragons.
That's the state.
In
There are dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're
And-
just
and
so
they're-
rare.
And you're saying is that some wizard or Balrog took it one step further and was like, the abomination is now mixed with human, and it's a dragonborn. Like,
I mean, if
I-
you can
I don't
mingle
like it.
goblin and men to create Urukai, then I mean, like, why not dragons
Yeah.
somehow? Right?
I mean,
They're
I
from
hate
Arcane
all
games.
of this, right? Let's be clear. I hate all of
I
it.
am not espousing.
All right,
this by any
Craig. All
means.
right, good job.
Yeah. There's
Turtles. Yes.
added to that list I hate. So that's the answer. That it's a very short list. Yeah.
Dwarves.
Yeah. Frogmen,
elves.
bear, like turtles. I mean I hate it all.
How about a
Like-
How about a non-player's hand? That makes sense. We could totally put that in. I mean, like, other than like a shifter, right? Not a
Well, I
shifter,
have ASMR.
Yeah.
I have ASMR because I said if like
the
like
Maiar or Valar.
for my Middle Earth, I said for my Middle Earth games, everybody at the very beginning rolled a D100,
Mhm.
and if you got a 90 or above, you had the option of playing an ASMR wizard or druid.
Mhm.
You didn't have to, but you had the option to, and so ASMR would be the answer there. Yeah, it's probably a get out of jail free answer, but it's
Well,
an
I mean, the
answer.
tracks, the Maiar seem like they're celestial, effectively.
If I had to go with like a really weird one, like if I had to like play by the rules, quote unquote, I think Goliaths would be a good choice.
I was thinking Goliath.
Mhm.
And if I had to go even weirder than that, if I had to go into like really weird territory, I could probably get behind a satyr
Sure.
or a minotaur.
Minotaur, I'd probably have a harder
Mm.
time with
It's
than a satyr.
it's tricky. It's tricky. I don't want to, but if I had to, like, there's
How
a
would-
spot. There's a
How would you do the
spot.
Minotaur?
Same thing as an
It's a
orc,
minotaur.
right?
Yeah, it's a yeah. It's a beast man.
I mean,
Whatever.
really, you could do
like,
that with any anthropomorphic creature, though.
You could, but I think Minotaur is classic in this, like, maybe not in the same way that Tolkien presented, like,
But like
classic,
Greek mythology, there's
but
like a
Greek is close enough that I can be okay. And like a Minotaur, like I could explain a Minotaur in the same vein as Beorn, right?
hmm, maybe yeah, I can
Again,
see that.
Interesting.
it's a rough thing, but
Mhm.
I could live with that. Centaurs would also be on my list of possibilities.
Sure. Can you imagine centaurs riding out with the
Yeah,
Rohirrim?
Bear Droid said that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could see a centaur. I don't want to, but I could, right? Like,
Mm.
I don't want to.
yeah.
Oh, they were more than
Yeah,
buds.
all we're doing is we're like what we're doing here is we're saying here's the line between Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, where Tolkien's like, this is I'm clearly defining the mythology
Mhm.
of my world, or that my world is
C.S.
based around,
Lewis, man.
and C.S. Lewis is like staying
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
just
take
yeah,
all the
I'll find a
mythologies.
spot.
Well, that's the thing, right? He borrowed a lot. He utilized other mythologies to create his own mythologies, as opposed to Tolkien, who borrowed the flavor of other mythologies to create a more unique set.
A
of
singular.
Singular, right? I mean, for
Very
God's sake, C.S. Lewis brought in Santa Claus. Need I say more? Bless him,
Yeah.
Lord. But I mean, like, I do love their relationship between the two of them, though. So I love their writing relationship and their friendship with one another. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just thought that's an interesting question, Craig. Like, I liked it. Exactly though. Like, I keep going back to he says Bugs Bunny standing next to the Fellowship. I'm like, yeah, I think that's the weird one.
Super cringe.
You're the devil.
Again, I'm saying if the
No.
player didn't play it goofy, or
Get thee behind me, Satan.
Lifeless devil, come out! We're gonna have ourselves an exorcism on the first virtual exorcism.
Yeah. Yeah.
so the next next Middle Earth campaign, am I invited?
You're not invited.
You're disallowed.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk for a minute here before we close out chat. Let's talk about plans.
Yes.
Next week, December 12th. I think we're good to go, right? We feel good about the 12th.
Feeling good.
So we'll have an episode of some sort then. You know what? That might be a good time to do a holiday.
Let's do anything. Like, chat, help us out. For Pete's sake, man. Are you gonna make us do everything, chat? Like, if you got it,
Don't ask him that. Don't ask
actually,
him that.
I regret my previous statement. No, do you like if Chad has any ideas, something that you'd like to see us either flesh out, maybe like fleshing out Santa Claus, or as a character, like an NPC.
Holiday streamed game. All right, Craig, is that a serious request? If Craig is saying no, if that's what the chat wants, is a it would be a short game. We're not going to do a 4-hour romp.
Yeah.
But if what chat wants is that, okay. Let's see if anybody else is with you, Craig. But if somebody seconds your request, maybe it's just you and Bear Droid, and that at which point, Bear Droid, you have a lot of power right now.
You have a lot of power. You have a lot of power. And to Bear Droid's question, the first one.
I mean, yeah, come on, man, get out of here.
I mean,
There's
do I need
no
it?
other answer.
Is there a why?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I'm gonna be.
There will be an MSD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite Die Hard movie. I'm gonna be rough here. I like the first one a lot. I don't really care after that.
Not even Die Hard with a Vengeance.
They've never hit me in the right way because I don't really care for Bruce Willis, for the most part. For the most part, I just don't buy into his stuff for the most part. So, there's a few exceptions, but I think even the movies that I like with him in it, I like in spite of him and not because of him.
So
Gert,
Fifth Element.
to catch you up. I am the devil because I am trying to convince Zach that I can see a way that a Harengon could appear in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And it'd be justified.
Yeah, and then Craig is suggesting we pose to chat what you would like for us to do for next week's or this coming Sunday's episode. And Craig, I said we'll give you the option, we'll give you rain since it'll be holidays and fun and whatnot. And Craig is suggesting that we stream a game Sunday, just like a 2 to 3 hour stream game.
And Greg, I think Gert just seconded it.
Now, is it supposed to be?
I appreciate your vomit. Thank you.
Yeah, we share vomit, Gert. You and I. Yeah, it's a communal. Yeah, never mind. We'll move on.
What the hell just happened?
Just play the hardcover. Yeah. Just we'll play it in a 2 to 3 hour slot.
Wait a minute. Is that something that just came down from WotC? Because that sounds like something they would do. Here, run this new hardcover we got in the next
Yes.
slot. The whole thing.
Girk, you're my people, Girk and Ferristine. You're my people. This is Troy. Troy's not invited to our Middle Earth games, so we can. Yep.
I didn't say that I would do it or that it should happen.
It doesn't matter. You have opened the door, and I won't have any open doors.
Yeah, I will not have any open doors. No, because honestly, I would rather see a Harengon in the Middle Earth than a Tiefling or a Warforged
This is not what you said,
dragon.
though.
Yes,
you did
it
not
is.
Say, no. You said I could see a Harengon in Middle Earth.
Yes.
That is a completely different thing than saying I would rather this than this.
You took that phrase
Open
out
door
of context.
Bear Droid.
Out of context.
Exactly. Open doors lead. All right. So, yeah. All right.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. You're not twisting my words.
Yeah, we can do a game. I have numerous things already preloaded and set up and ready. I think I could even pull one out of the hat if we really want to do that.
And he is suggesting Santa must die. Now wait a minute. You said that I need to wear a Santa hat. What do you say?
I was about to say, is he talking about you?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. We'll run something next week, or not even next week, on Sunday. We'll run something on Sunday. No promises on what it is yet, but we'll figure that out. And it'll be interesting. So, cool. Thanks, Craig. Yep, exactly. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. And you know what? Keep an eye on Discord. We'll let you know what's coming in Discord at some point this week. So.
Oh man.
All right. Good to go. Get out of here.
Yep.